The front door of my aunt's house swung open before I could even knock. Emma stood there, her hazel eyes wide and urgent, grabbing my wrist the second I stepped inside. "Mike, we need to talk. Now." I barely had time to drop my duffel bag in the hallway before she dragged me into the living room. My aunt called something about dinner from the kitchen, but Emma shut the door behind us, cutting off the sounds of normal family life. "Okay? What's the emergency?" I pulled my arm free and flopped onto the couch. The drive from my old town had taken 4 hours, and all I wanted was food and sleep before dealing with whatever teenage drama my cousin had going on. Emma didn't sit. She walked back and forth in front of me, her black ponytail swinging with each turn. Lincoln High isn't like other schools. There are rules you have to follow, or you'll die. I waited for the punchline. When it didn't come, I laughed. "Seriously? This is how you welcome me? With some kind of new kid hazing story?" "I'm not joking." She stopped pacing and fixed me with a stare that made my smile fade. 8 rules. You follow them exactly or you won't make it through the year." "Emma, come on." "Rule 1. She held up a finger. "Always greet the janitor when you see him. Say good morning, good afternoon, whatever. He's not human, but as long as you acknowledge him, he won't hurt you." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "The janitor's not human." "Got it." She ignored my sarcasm. "Rule 2. Never use the 3rd floor girls' restroom during lunch. There's a ghost in there that screams so loud it can burst your eardrums. Students have gone permanently deaf." "A screaming ghost, sure." Rule 3. Her voice got sharper. "Stay out of the locker rooms after 5 p.m. I don't know what lives in there after dark, but people who go in don't come out the same. If they come out at all." I rubbed my face, fighting off a yawn. "How many of these are there?" 8. Pay attention." She started pacing again. Rule 4. In the 2nd floor boys' restroom, ignore the 4th stall. Sometimes you'll see legs under the door, like someone's using it. Don't look closer. Don't knock. Don't try to open it. Just leave. What happens if I look? I don't know, and you don't want to find out. She spun to face me. Rule 5. If you see a boy with no eyes, and I mean smooth skin where his eyes should be, look away immediately. Don't stare, don't make eye contact with where his eyes should be. Just turn your head and walk the other direction. My stomach tightened a little at that one. The image was more specific than I expected from a prank. Rule 6, Emma continued. Behind the school, there's a pond. Never step into it. Not even the edge. Not even if you drop something in it. The water's only 3 feet deep, but students who wade in are found drowned in water that shouldn't be able to drown anyone. This is getting elaborate. I tried to keep my voice light, but something in her expression made it hard. Rule 7. If the intercom starts playing music, any music, during school hours, find a teacher immediately. Don't stay in the hallways. Don't go to your locker. Don't finish what you're doing. Get to the nearest classroom with an adult in it. Why? Because whatever roams the halls when the music plays doesn't distinguish between students and prey. She knelt in front of me, putting her hands on my knees. And Rule 8. The most important one. Always, always leave school by 6 p.m. If you're still inside after 6, you won't survive the night. I don't mean detention or getting locked in. I mean you'll die, Mike. Or worse. I looked down at her hands gripping my knees. Her fingers were actually trembling. Emma, this is a lot. You really expect me to believe Lincoln High is some kind of supernatural death trap? I expect you to follow the rules whether you believe or not. She stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. My brother went there. He learned these rules after watching his best friend get pulled into that pond. The friend's body was found floating the next day, lungs full of water, in a pond where you can stand up and your head stays above the surface. Your brother never mentioned any of this when I visited 2 years ago. Because he doesn't talk about it. Most people who graduate from Lincoln never talk about it. They just want to forget. She moved to the window, staring out at the dark street. But I can't let you go in blind. Not when following 8 simple rules could save your life. I stood up, stretching muscles stiff from the drive. Part of me wanted to argue more, to point out how insane this all sounded. But Emma wasn't a drama queen. In all the years I'd known her, she'd never tried to prank me or make up stories. She was the careful one, the responsible one who reminded everyone to wear seatbelts and check expiration dates. Okay, I said finally. Let's say I believe you, which I don't. But let's say I humor you and follow these rules. What then? She turned from the window and I saw tears in her eyes. Then you survive. That's all I want, Mike. For you to survive until graduation. Emma? Promise me. She crossed the room and grabbed my hands. Promise you'll follow every rule even if you think I'm crazy. Promise you'll greet the janitor, avoid that bathroom, leave by 6. All of it. Her hands were cold and shaking in mine. Whatever she believed, it was real to her. Real enough to make her cry at the thought of me not taking it seriously. Fine, I said, squeezing her hands. I promise to follow your 8 rules. But when nothing supernatural happens and the janitor turns out to be just some weird guy who needs dental work, we're going to laugh about this. I hope you're right. She let go of my hands and wiped her eyes. I hope I'm just paranoid and you'll prove me wrong tomorrow. But follow the rules anyway, please. I already promised, didn't I? I picked up my duffel bag from where I dropped it. Now can we eat? I'm starving, and your mom's cooking smells amazing. Emma managed a weak smile. Yeah, let's eat. And Mike, thank you for listening. Even if you don't believe me, thank you for agreeing to follow them. I put the bag over my shoulder and went to the door. That's what family's for, right? Putting up with each other's weird safety stuff. She didn't laugh at my joke. As we walked to the kitchen, I caught her looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite figure out. Worry mixed with relief, mixed with something else. Like she was already sad about something that hadn't happened yet. Dinner was normal enough. My aunt asked about the drive. My uncle talked about football, and Emma stayed mostly quiet. But I noticed she kept looking at me throughout the meal as if checking that I was still there, still safe. Later, lying in the guest room bed, I looked at the ceiling and went through the 8 rules again. They were specific in a way that made my skin crawl. Not unclear warnings about bad kids or dangerous areas, but exact instructions about exact locations and things. The 4th stall, the boy with no eyes, the music on the intercom. I rolled onto my side and closed my eyes. Tomorrow I'd go to Lincoln High, follow Emma's rules to keep her happy, and prove that my new school was just as boring and normal as every other school I'd attended. The janitor would be some old guy with bad teeth. The 4th stall would be out of order. The pond would have a no swimming sign. Simple explanations for everything. That's what I told myself as I fell asleep, Emma's list of rules going through my head like a prayer I didn't believe in. I dragged myself out of bed at 6:30, my head still fuzzy from the move. The guest room smelled like lavender fabric softener, and morning light came through unfamiliar curtains. Emma's rules kept replaying in my mind while I got dressed. 8 ways to not die at my new school. Right. I grabbed my backpack and went downstairs. Emma had already left, according to my aunt, who pushed a plate of scrambled eggs at me. I ate mechanically, nodding along to her questions about how I'd slept and whether I needed anything for school. Normal aunt stuff. Normal morning. Nothing supernatural about eggs and orange juice. The walk to Lincoln High took 15 minutes. Other kids walked along the sidewalks, talking and laughing like students anywhere. The building itself looked standard, red brick, 3 stories, American flag out front. Not exactly the haunted death trap Emma had described. I pushed through the main doors into a lobby that smelled like floor cleaner and teenage body spray. Trophy cases lined the walls. Motivational posters reminded everyone to dream big. A normal high school on a normal Monday morning. Then I saw him. The janitor stood near the entrance, moving his mop in slow circles across the already clean linoleum. Gray uniform, work boots, totally ordinary from behind. This was it. My first chance to test Emma's paranoid rules. If I said good morning and he turned out to be just some regular guy, I could text her immediately and end this whole thing. "Good morning," I said, keeping my voice casual. The janitor stopped mopping. He straightened up slowly, like his spine was a rusty hinge, and turned to face me. My feet stopped working. His smile stretched too wide, showing teeth that shouldn't exist in a human mouth. Too many of them, packed in at angles that hurt to look at, some pointed and some flat, put together in patterns that made my eyes water trying to follow them. But worse than the teeth were his eyes, completely black. No whites at all, just smooth darkness that reflected the overhead lights like oil. His skin looked wrong too, waxy and stiff, like someone had made a face out of plastic and done a rushed job of it. The features were all there, nose, mouth, cheeks, but they sat on his face like accessories rather than natural parts. He nodded once, a slow dip of his fake-looking head, and turned back to his mopping. I forced my legs to move to carry me past him and deeper into the school. My hands were already shaking as I messed with my class schedule. First period, room 218. I needed to find stairs. I needed to get away from that thing pretending to be a janitor. Other students walked past me like nothing had happened, like we hadn't just figured out that the custodial staff included nightmare creatures with too many teeth. A girl at her locker complained to her friend about a pop quiz. 2 guys argued about last night's game. Normal high school morning, if you ignored the part where I'd just greeted a monster. The morning classes went by in a blur. Teachers introduced themselves, handed out syllabi, explained their grading policies. I took notes without really processing them, my mind stuck on those black eyes and that impossible smile. Every time I tried to convince myself I'd imagined it, I remembered the waxy texture of his skin, the way the light had hit those oil-slick eyes. By the time lunch came around, I'd almost managed to push the janitor thing aside. Maybe I was just stressed from the move. Maybe the early morning light had played tricks on me. Maybe those weren't really extra teeth, just shadows or something. I bought a sad-looking slice of pizza from the cafeteria and wandered the halls while I ate, trying to get used to the layout. Second floor had most of the math and science rooms. Third floor seemed to be English and history. Normal school stuff, normal layout, normal... The scream hit me hard. It came from the girls' restroom just ahead, a sound so loud and desperate that my pizza slipped from my hand. The scream went on, high and sharp, full of a kind of pain that made my chest tight. Other kids in the hallway immediately covered their ears and started walking faster, heads down like this was just another ordinary problem. The bathroom door burst open. A girl stumbled out, maybe a freshman from her size, tears running down her face. She pressed her hands against her ears and ran past me, crying. Behind her, the screaming continued, muffled now by the closing door, but still horrible, still impossible to ignore. I stood frozen in the hallway, my dropped pizza spreading grease on the floor at my feet. The screaming went on for what felt like hours, but was probably only a couple minutes. Then it cut off, sudden as a slammed door, leaving a silence that rang in my ears. 2 girls walked past me toward the bathroom. "Wait," I said, the word coming out before I could stop it. "You can't go in there." They looked at me like I'd suggested they couldn't breathe oxygen. "It's over," one of them said. "She only screams during lunch period." She? The ghost. Duh. The girl rolled her eyes. "You must be new." They pushed through the bathroom door like it was nothing, like a ghost that screamed people into tears was just another minor inconvenience, like a broken water fountain or a vending machine that ate your dollar. I bent down to clean up my dropped pizza. The cheese had turned into a greasy mess that matched the sick feeling in my stomach. Emma's rules weren't paranoid warnings. They were survival instructions. The janitor with too many teeth. The ghost in the bathroom. 2 rules tested. 2 supernatural threats confirmed. I threw the pizza mess in a nearby trash can. I found an empty classroom and sat at a desk, trying to get my breathing under control. The school looked so normal. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, motivational posters about reaching for the stars. But underneath that ordinary surface, things with black eyes mopped the floors, and ghosts screamed in the bathrooms. I pulled out my phone to text Emma, then stopped. What would I even say? You were right, the school is full of monsters. She already knew that. She'd tried to warn me, and I'd treated it like a joke. My reflection in the phone's black screen looked pale and scared. Good. I should be scared. Being scared might keep me alive in this place. I thought about the other rules. The 4th stall with something behind it. The boy with no eyes. The pond that drowned people in 3 feet of water. The music that brought out something that hunted students. Each one specific. Each one real. 6 p.m. I had to be out by 6 p.m. I checked the time. 12:47. 5 hours and 13 minutes to survive my first day at Lincoln High. I slid my phone back into my pocket and stood up from the desk. 5 hours and 13 minutes. That's all I had to do. Survive 5 more hours in this nightmare disguised as a high school. The bell rang for 5th period, and I joined the stream of students flowing through the hallways. My shoulders stayed tense, eyes looking around every corner and doorway. I caught myself checking behind me every few steps, half expecting to see the janitor with his oil-slick eyes or hear that terrible scream start up again. My afternoon classes should have been a distraction. Biology, world history, Spanish, normal subjects in normal classrooms with normal teachers who had no idea they worked in a building full of monsters. But I couldn't focus on cellular structures or verb conjugations. Every creak of a desk made me flinch. Every time someone walked past the classroom door, I had to check if they had eyes. During the break between 5th and 6th period, I needed to stop at my locker. The route took me past the 2nd floor boys' restroom. My steps slowed as I approached it, remembering Emma's warning about the 4th stall. The bathroom door stood partly open, just a regular door, nothing special about it. I could hear water running inside, someone washing their hands maybe. Normal bathroom sounds. I kept walking, but my eyes drifted to the gap in the doorway as I passed. Through the narrow opening, I could see the row of stalls. 1st stall, door open. 2nd stall, door open. 3rd stall, door open. 4th stall, door closed. My feet stopped moving. Dark shadows moved beneath the closed door of the 4th stall. The kind of shadows feet would make if someone was standing inside. As I watched, the shadows moved slightly, weight changing from one foot to the other. Someone was definitely in there. I forced myself to look away and keep walking. Just another student using the bathroom. That's all it was. That's all it could be. But normal shadows didn't move like that. The movement had been wrong somehow. Too fluid, like liquid spilling across the floor rather than solid feet changing position. And the shadows had been too dark, darker than they should have been under the fluorescent lights. My hands were sweating by the time I reached my locker. I spun the combination wrong twice before managing to open it. Around me, other students chatted and laughed, grabbed books, slammed locker doors. Nobody else seemed to notice that we were all walking past doorways to hell every few minutes. Spanish class dragged on forever. Senora Martinez conjugated verbs on the board while I stared at the clock, willing it to move faster. 3:45, 3:50, 3:55. When the final bell rang at 4, I was the first one out of my seat. I shoved my textbook into my backpack and headed for my locker one more time. Just grab my jacket and get out. Simple plan. Follow the rules, make it home alive. The hallways were crowded with students eager to escape. I weaved through groups of friends making after-school plans, couples saying goodbye at their lockers, athletes heading to practice. Normal teenage life happening all around me while I tried not to think about shadow feet in bathroom stalls. I turned the corner toward my locker and stopped. A boy stood at the far end of the hallway, maybe 30 feet away. He was facing my direction, wearing jeans and a plain gray hoodie. Average height, average build, completely unremarkable except for his face. Where his eyes should have been, there was only smooth skin. Not scars or closed eyelids, just unbroken flesh stretched across the spaces where eyes belonged, like someone had forgotten to finish sculpting his face. The skin there was the same tone as the rest of his face, seamless and disturbing in its completeness. He turned his head slightly, and even without eyes I could feel him looking at me, or looking at where I was. Some other sense guiding him, tracking my presence in the hallway. Emma's voice rang in my head. Look away immediately. Don't stare, don't make eye contact with where his eyes should be. I jerked my head to the left, fixing my look on a bulletin board covered in homecoming announcements. My peripheral vision caught him taking a step forward, toward me. Walk the other direction. I spun on my heel and walked back the way I'd come, fighting every instinct that screamed at me to run. Running would draw attention. Running would mark me as prey. I kept my pace steady, normal, just another student who'd forgotten something and had to double back. My neck prickled with the feeling of being watched. No, not watched. Eyes watch. This was something else, some other sense tracking my movement through the hallway. I could hear footsteps behind me, matching my pace. I turned left at the first intersection, then right at the next. The main hallway opened up ahead, bright with afternoon sunlight streaming through tall windows. More students here, more witnesses, more normal human activity. I merged into the crowd and kept moving, not stopping until I reached the far end near the gym. Only then did I risk looking back. The hallway behind me was full of students. No gray hoodie, no boy with smooth skin where eyes should be. He'd vanished as suddenly as he'd appeared, leaving me with sweat pooling at the base of my spine. 3 encounters in one day. The janitor, the ghost, and now the eyeless boy. Each one exactly as Emma had described. Each one real and dangerous and walking the same halls as hundreds of unaware students. I found a water fountain and drank until my mouth didn't feel like sandpaper anymore. My hands shook as I wiped water from my chin. How did anyone survive 4 years in this place? How did Emma's brother graduate without losing his mind? By following the rules. That was the only answer that made sense. I straightened up and checked the time. 4:23. An hour and 37 minutes until 6. I could make it. I would make it. No library, no after-school clubs, no hanging around to make friends. Just get my stuff and get out. My locker was on the same hallway where I'd seen the eyeless boy. I approached carefully, checking every direction before spinning my combination. My jacket was crammed in the back where I'd shoved it this morning, back when I thought Emma was paranoid, and the worst thing about Lincoln High would be cafeteria food. I pulled on the jacket and zipped it up. Stupid, really. Like cotton and polyester could shield me from creatures that defied the laws of nature. But it was mine, from my old life, and wearing it made me feel less like prey in a building full of predators. The parking lot was visible through the windows, freedom just a few hundred feet away. I could see my aunt's car in the pickup lane, right where she'd promised to be. All I had to do was walk through those front doors and climb into a normal car driven by a normal person who had no idea her nephew had just spent the day dodging monsters. I slung my backpack over my shoulder and headed for the exit. Past the trophy cases, past the motivational posters, past the spot where I'd greeted the janitor this morning, and learned that nightmares could carry mops. The cool air outside hit my face like a blessing. I'd made it through day 1. Followed the rules, avoided the threats, lived to see another homework assignment. As I climbed into my aunt's car and she asked about my day, I almost laughed at the simple normalcy of the question. "It was intense," I said, buckling my seatbelt. "But I think I'm getting the hang of it." She smiled and pulled away from the curb, talking about dinner plans and whether I needed any school supplies. I let her voice wash over me while I looked back at Lincoln High, its red brick front hiding horrors that couldn't be explained. Emma had been right about everything. The rules weren't paranoid warnings. They were a lifeline. And I was going to hold on to them with both hands until graduation day finally set me free from this place. If I made it that long, I moved my backpack to my other shoulder as I walked into the library after last period. 3 days at Lincoln High and I was already behind on assignments. The move had messed up my academic rhythm, and I needed to catch up if I wanted to maintain my GPA at this nightmare school. The library felt different from the rest of the building, quieter, calmer, almost normal. Tall windows let in afternoon sunlight that made dust motes dance above the wooden tables. The smell of old books and lemon furniture polish reminded me of my old school's library, back when my biggest worry was whether I'd get into AP chemistry. I found an empty table in the back corner and spread out my materials. Math textbook, English anthology, spiral notebooks, mechanical pencils lined up just right. The familiar ritual of organizing my workspace helped push away thoughts of oil-slick eyes and smooth skin where eyes should be. The calculus problems came first. Derivatives and integrals had a beautiful logic to them. Follow the rules, get the right answer. Nothing supernatural about the chain rule. No monsters hiding in polynomial functions. Just numbers and symbols that behaved exactly as they should. Other students worked at nearby tables, their presence reassuring. A group of girls collaborated on what looked like a history project, their whispered discussions and rustling papers creating a comfortable background noise. 2 tables over, a guy typed furiously on his laptop, probably racing a deadline like me. I worked through problem after problem, my pencil scratching across paper in satisfying strokes. Each completed equation felt like a small victory, proof that some things in this world still made sense. My math teacher, Mr. Peterson, had assigned 20 problems. I'd finish them all. Show him I was serious about his class even though I started 3 days late. The sunlight moved as I worked, creeping across the table like honey. I switched to English homework, 3 chapters of The Great Gatsby with annotation requirements. My highlighter squeaked across pages as I marked important passages, making notes in the margins about symbolism and character development. Normal student stuff, safe student stuff. The library began to empty around me. The history project girls packed up first, their chairs scraping against the floor as they left. The laptop guy followed soon after, sliding his computer into a messenger bag and heading out. Other students drifted away in 1s and 2s, but I barely noticed. I had 2 more chapters to annotate, and my notes were really starting to come together. My hand cramped from writing, so I stretched my fingers and rolled my shoulders. The library had gotten properly quiet now, that deep silence that made every small sound seem amplified. A page turning, a pencil dropping. The buzz of the overhead lights. I highlighted another passage about the green light and wrote a note about hope and impossibility. My old English teacher would have loved this analysis. Maybe Mrs. Chen here would be equally impressed. First impressions mattered, especially when you were the new kid who'd shown up in the middle of the semester. The calculus homework was done. The English chapters were thoroughly annotated. I pulled out my Spanish workbook next, determined to knock out the conjugation exercises before heading home. My aunt wouldn't start dinner until 6:30 anyway, so I had time. The workbook pages were mind-numbing but necessary. Trabajar, trabashaba, trabashare. I worked through each verb methodically, double-checking my endings. Spanish had been my weakest subject at my old school, and I couldn't afford to fall further behind here. My pencil moved across the pages in steady rhythm. Present tense, past tense, future tense. Regular verbs, irregular verbs, stem-changing verbs. The repetition was almost meditative, letting my mind drift while my hand kept writing. A door slammed somewhere in the building, the sound carrying through the empty library. I glanced up briefly but saw nothing unusual. Just the rows of bookshelves standing like silent guards, the study tables with their green-shaded lamps, the tall windows now showing a darkening sky. Wait, darkening sky? My hand froze mid-conjugation. The sunlight that had been creeping across my table was gone, replaced by the gray twilight that comes just after sunset. The library's overhead lights had switched on at some point without me noticing, casting everything in harsh fluorescent brightness. I grabbed my phone from my backpack's front pocket, my fingers suddenly clumsy. The screen lit up, showing the time in numbers that made my stomach drop through the floor. 6:15 p.m. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering on the table. 6:15. 15 minutes past Emma's most important rule. 15 minutes into the time when staying at school meant death or worse. I shoved everything into my backpack with shaking hands. Books, notebooks, pencils scattered across the table. I swept them all into the bag without caring about organization. My chair screeched against the floor as I stood too fast, the sound impossibly loud in the silent library, the main entrance. I needed to get to the main entrance. My feet moved before my brain fully processed the situation, carrying me between the tall bookshelves toward the library doors. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me, but underneath that known sound was something else, a deeper vibration that seemed to come from the walls themselves. I burst through the library doors into the hallway and stopped. Complete darkness stretched in both directions, broken only by the red glow of emergency exit signs. The overhead lights that had been blazing when I'd entered the library were all off now, leaving the hallway in a thick blackness that seemed to swallow the exit sign's weak illumination. The air felt wrong. During the day, the school's air was normal, a mix of floor cleaner, teenage sweat, and cafeteria food. Now it felt thick and oppressive, like trying to breathe through wet cloth. Each inhale took conscious effort, and the air tasted stale, very old, like it had been trapped in these hallways for decades. I turned left toward where I thought the main entrance was, my hand trailing along the wall for guidance. The linoleum floor that had squeaked under hundreds of shoes during the day was silent now, muffling my footsteps into soft thuds that barely carried. My fingers found a door frame, then another. Classroom doors, all closed, with no light showing through the narrow windows. The darkness wasn't just an absence of light. It had weight and presence, pressing against me from all sides. A locker slammed somewhere behind me. The metallic bang carried through the empty hallways, followed by another slam, then another, like someone was working their way down a row of lockers, opening and closing each one. But the sounds were too rhythmic, too deliberate. Not random vandalism, but something searching. I walked faster, my backpack bouncing against my spine with each step. The emergency exit sign ahead marked an intersection, left or right. In daylight, I knew this school's layout. In this oppressive darkness, every hallway looked the same. I chose left, hoping muscle memory from 3 days of classes would guide me. My breathing sounded too loud in the silence, each exhale seeming to bounce off the walls. The thick air made my lungs work harder, and I could taste something metallic at the back of my throat. Another sound drifted through the darkness, a wet, sliding noise like someone dragging a mop across the floor. But it was too heavy, too organic. Not a mop. Something else. Something that moved with purpose through the dark hallways of Lincoln High after hours. My hand found another corner, and I turned right this time. The emergency exit sign here flickered, its red light stuttering in a pattern that hurt to look at. In the brief moments of darkness between flickers, I could swear I saw shapes moving in my peripheral vision. Not quite human shapes, not quite anything I could name. The main entrance had to be close. It had to be. I'd made too many turns, gotten lost in the dark maze of hallways. But surely I was heading toward the front of the building. My feet moved faster, just short of running. Running would make noise. Running would mark me as prey. A door creaked open somewhere to my left, slow and deliberate, like someone savoring the sound. No light came from the opening doorway, just a deeper rectangle of black against the regular darkness. I kept walking, eyes fixed straight ahead, refusing to look at what might be emerging from that room. The sliding sound was getting closer. Whatever was making it had picked up my trail, following the same path through the darkened hallways. The sound had a rhythm to it now. Slide, pause, like something pulling itself forward in lurching movements. My shoulder hit a wall where I'd expected another hallway. Dead end. I'd turned myself around completely in the darkness, and now I was trapped with that wet, sliding sound getting closer. My hands scrambled along the wall, finding nothing but smooth, painted cinder block. Then, a door handle, cold metal under my palm. I twisted and pulled, praying it wasn't locked. The door opened into another hallway, this one with windows along one side. Not much light came through, just the faint orange glow of parking lot lights, but after the complete darkness, it felt like salvation. I could see the main entrance at the far end. Double doors with wire-reinforced glass, push bars shining faintly in the dim light. Freedom. Safety. All I had to do was make it 50 feet through this last hallway. Behind me, the sliding sound reached the doorway I'd just come through. I didn't look back. Looking back would be accepting that something was really there, really following me through the dark school. Instead, I focused on those double doors and moved. Footsteps carried from another hallway, multiple sets, moving in perfect synchronization. Not the chaotic sound of students or even teachers. These footsteps had an inhuman precision, each foot hitting the floor at exactly the same moment. Like a single entity with too many legs. The synchronized footsteps were coming from a side hallway between me and the exit. I'd have to pass that opening to reach the doors. No other choice. I kept moving, trying to time my approach so I could sprint past without seeing what was making those sounds. A voice whispered from an overhead vent, speaking words in a language that predated human speech. The syllables hurt my ears, each one feeling like ice water dripping directly onto my brain. More voices joined from other vents, creating a chorus of inhuman whispers that filled the hallway. 20 feet to the side hallway. 10 feet. I could see the darkness of that opening, could hear those synchronized footsteps getting louder. Whatever was in there would see me pass, would see me and maybe follow me right to the exit. I passed the opening at a steady walk, eyes locked on the double doors ahead. In my peripheral vision, shapes moved in that side hallway. Tall shapes that walked upright but wrong, with too many joints bending in directions that defied anatomy. I didn't turn to look, couldn't turn to look. The whispers from the vents grew louder, more insistent. The sliding sound behind me picked up speed. The synchronized footsteps turned into my hallway, following me toward the exit. 10 feet from the doors, 5 feet. My hands hit the push bars, and I shoved through into the parking lot. Cool night air hit my face, and I gulped it down like water. Behind me, all the sounds stopped at once. The whispers, the footsteps, the sliding. Cut off like someone had thrown a switch. I stood under the parking lot lights, breathing hard and staring back at the dark windows of Lincoln High. Nothing moved behind the glass. No shapes, no shadows, no evidence of what had been hunting me through those hallways. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Emma. "Are you home? Please tell me you're home." I looked at the timestamp. 6:47 p.m. I'd been in that darkness for just over 30 minutes, but it had felt like hours. Like a lifetime of being prey in hallways that belonged to things I couldn't name and didn't want to understand. Another buzz. Another text from Emma. "Mike, answer me." I typed back with trembling fingers. I'm okay. Made it out. 3 dots appeared immediately as she typed her response. Thank God. Never do that again. Never. I wouldn't. Emma's 8 rules weren't suggestions or paranoid warnings. They were the only things standing between students and whatever claimed Lincoln High after dark. I'd learned that lesson in the most terrifying way possible, and I'd never forget it. The walk home took forever, my legs shaky and uncooperative. Every shadow made me flinch. Every sound made me look over my shoulder. But nothing followed me from the school. Whatever hunted in those dark hallways, it was bound to the building. Limited by rules I didn't understand but would absolutely follow. From now on, I'd be out of that school by 5:30 every day. No exceptions. No homework was worth experiencing that darkness again. No grade was worth becoming another casualty of Lincoln High's supernatural ecosystem. I'd survived my first mistake. I might not survive a second. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in those dark hallways with synchronized footsteps closing in. My sheets were soaked with sweat by morning, twisted around my legs from hours of restless turning. I got to school 45 minutes early, before most students would even think about showing up. The morning air felt sharp and clean after yesterday's thick darkness, and I breathed it in while crossing the empty parking lot. My legs still felt weak from last night's escape, muscles sore from tension I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Emma stood by my locker, arms crossed, foot tapping against the linoleum. Her black ponytail swung as she turned toward me, and the relief that moved across her face made my chest tight with guilt. Thank you, I said before she could speak. The words came out rough, my throat still raw from breathing that oppressive air. The rules, they saved my life last night. Her shoulders dropped, and she leaned against the lockers like I'd just taken a huge burden off her. I was checking my phone every 5 minutes after 6. When you finally texted back, she shook her head. What happened? I spun my locker combination with fingers that weren't quite steady yet. Lost track of time in the library, doing homework. Didn't check my phone until 6:15. Emma's quick breath made me look at her. Her face had gone pale under the fluorescent lights. I made it to the hallway, and everything was dark. Not just lights off dark. Something else. Thick. Hard to breathe. I pulled out my calculus textbook, needing something normal to hold. Things were moving in there, following me, the sounds they made. You don't have to describe it. Emma's voice was soft. I know. I shut my locker and faced her properly. How do you know? You said your brother went here, but he learned the rules after Malik died. She stared past me at the empty hallway. His best friend. They were working on a science project, thought they'd just finish up real quick after basketball practice. 7:30 on a Tuesday night. The hallway felt colder suddenly. I gripped my textbook tighter. They found Malik the next morning in the chemistry lab, or what was left of him. The official story was a chemical accident, but Tom saw what really happened. He was hiding in a supply closet when those things came through. Emma's hands twisted the bottom of her sweater. He hid in that closet for 9 hours. 9 hours listening to his best friend die, too terrified to help or run. My stomach turned. I'd been in that darkness for 30 minutes and nearly lost my mind. 9 hours. After that, Tom started asking questions. Found other students who knew about the rules. Some had learned from older siblings. Some figured it out through trial and error. She finally looked at me again. He made me memorize all 8 before he'd let me set foot in this place. Said he couldn't save Malik, but he could save me. We started walking toward first period, our footsteps the only sound in the early morning hallway. I kept checking corners and doorways, a new habit I'd probably never shake. There's no pattern to them, Emma continued. The things here. Sometimes a student can go weeks without seeing anything. Sometimes you'll have 3 encounters in one day. That's why following every rule every time is the only way. I get it now. The words felt inadequate. Really get it. Not just believing you, but understanding that this place is... I searched for the right word. Wrong. Fundamentally wrong. Emma nodded. Most students never figure that out. They see the janitor and think he's just ugly. They hear the ghost and think it's pipes or something. Their brains won't let them handle what's really here. Lucky them. No. Her voice turned hard. Lucky is knowing the rules. Lucky is having someone warn you. The ones who don't see it don't believe it. They're the ones who disappear, who have accidents, who transfer schools suddenly and no one ever hears from them again. We passed the second-floor boys' bathroom. I kept my eyes straight ahead, not wanting to know if shadows were moving under that fourth stall this early in the morning. "Promise me something," Emma said as we climbed the stairs to the third floor. "Really promise. Not like before when you were humoring me. Anything. Never get comfortable here. Never think you've got it figured out. The second you let your guard down, the second you think you're safe, that's when this place gets you." I shifted my textbook to my other arm. "I promise. After last night, I couldn't get comfortable here if I tried." "Good." She stopped at the door to her English class. "That fear will keep you alive." More students were arriving now, filling the hallways with normal teenage noise. Laughter, complaints about homework, gossip about who was dating who, all of them not knowing what walked these halls after dark. What was probably watching us right now from behind innocent-looking doors and normal-looking walls. 8 rules, I said. That's all. 8 simple rules between me and whatever's waiting in this place. Emma managed a small smile. "Not just 8 rules. You've got me too. We look out for each other, okay? No staying late, no taking shortcuts, no assuming anything is safe. Deal." She headed into her classroom and I continued to mine. The calculus textbook in my arms was a reminder that some things still made sense, even in a world where schools could be hunting grounds. I took my seat and pulled out my completed homework. 20 problems, all solved correctly, all following the proper mathematical rules. If only surviving Lincoln High was as straightforward as calculus. Follow the formula, get the right answer, stay alive. But math problems didn't have oil-slick eyes. Equations didn't slide through darkened hallways making wet sounds. Variables didn't whisper in dead languages from air vents while synchronized footsteps closed in. The teacher started class, and I forced myself to focus, to be a normal student in a deeply abnormal place, to pretend that knowing the quadratic formula was just as important as knowing to never look at the fourth stall. I'd follow Emma's rules with religious dedication now, every greeting to the janitor, every avoided bathroom, every look away from eyeless faces. The rules weren't suggestions or guidelines, they were commandments written in the blood of students who'd learned too late. 3 more years in this place. 3 more years of walking past monsters pretending to be janitors, of supernatural threats pretending to be normal high school problems. But I'd make it. I'd graduate. I'd follow every rule, every time, without exception. Because now I understood what Emma had been trying to tell me from the beginning. The rules weren't about avoiding detention or staying out of trouble. They were about staying human, staying whole, staying alive in a place that fed on the careless and the ignorant. Lincoln High had shown me its true face in those dark hallways, and I'd never forget it, never doubt it, never challenge it again. The 8 rules were my lifeline now, and I was going to hold on tight until the day I could finally leave this nightmare behind.